All right, everybody, welcome. It's nice to see all of you. I want to get started just out of respect for everybody's time who is here. So welcome, my name is Liz. This is the part 2 of a 3-part series, a framework and tools to implement and sustain monitoring and evaluation activities during and after crisis situations. So today in part 2, we'll be addressing data collection and analysis and using innovative techniques to create nimble processes and for new and experimental programming. And this is something that is anybody who works with a nonprofit or in the human services sector understands is not necessarily specific to times of crisis. It's something that we engage with every day. So hopefully these skills can apply long in the future. So I just want to take a moment, maybe if we can all just check in really quickly. I'm curious about who's here in the room. So maybe just open up your chat box and just say hi. Let us know your name and maybe where you're checking in from and what it is that you do.
Hello, my name is Edna Green. I work in the Bronx. I work with an organization called Mount Haven Community Partnership. I'm an ambassador, and we work in the community.
Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon. My name is Naomi Basket. I'm a community ambassador as well for the Bronx Mount Haven Partnership. And thank you for having me today.
Nice to meet you. I see Meredith checking in from North Carolina. I see Angie from Texas. Hi, Angie. Trisha from Boston. Trisha, I'm up in Boston right now too. We've got Peter. Hi, Peter from Washington, D.C. We've got Gabby, Director of MEL. Awesome. We've got Lynn from Virginia, New York City. Buddy. Hi, Buddy. We've got Courtney. Elizabeth. Hi, Elizabeth. From Connecticut, we've got Daniel and Ashley, Cheryl. Oh my goodness, we've got people from all over. It's so nice to meet all of you. Marcel, Alyssa, Carrie, Andrea, Amy, another Amy. Across the country, this is phenomenal. A number of New Yorkers and Northeasterners, but we've got people representing from Canada even. So it's really nice to meet all of you. I can see the common thread. We've got a whole bunch of do-gooders in this room right now. It's great to be in good company. Nice to meet all of you. Laura, very nice to meet you. So just some really quick housekeeping before we begin. And please, if you didn't get a chance to check in the chat box, please feel free. Still keeping my eye on that. In terms of the day today, we have an hour together. I want to maximize all of it. If you can do me the favor and just keep yourself on mute unless you're speaking, that would be really helpful. However, I really encourage being engaged and asking questions. So please feel free to, one, use your camera if you're feeling presentable, and maybe even if you're not, it would just be really nice to see your face. But if that's not your thing, no worries. But if you do wind up using your video, one thing I do want to just say is if you need to step away at any moment, feel free, just make sure you turn off your video. So we'll be using the chat box for the most part for Q&A. So if you have any questions as we're going, if you need me to slow down or speed up anything, give me any feedback you've got in the chat box. We have my colleague Veronica here, and she'll be managing that for me and jumping in with any questions that you might have. And then just FYI, this webinar is being recorded, and it's being recorded so that I can send you a copy at the end of this so that you have it for your reference. So in terms of myself, my name is Liz. As I said, I'm checking in from the Boston area. I'm a New Yorker though. I live in New York, and I'm up here. I've been up here since COVID broke. I am a applied research professional. I work in the nonprofit, government, and foundation sectors. I have been for the past 15 years. I started off my career as an 8th grade special education teacher, and I always say if I could teach 8th graders, I can teach anybody. and I hold true to that. After I taught for a while, I taught 6 years, and then I moved on. I got my MPH and my MSW from New York University. Since then, I've been working as an internal evaluator at Good Shepherd Services. I teach quantitative methods at NYU, and I'm also a facilitator for evaluation and learning consulting, and that is the group that is putting on this webinar today. So just in terms of the context, what we're doing here today, this is, as I said, part 2 of a 3-part series. It's in response, so the 3 of us got together, Diamond, Veronica, and I, and we all are consultants, and we all have a passion for the work, and we recognize that we're in a really hard time right now, just across the board. Government employees, foundations, everybody is, we've got some tough things that we're coping with. And so we wanted to find some sort of way to give back to our community in this time, and this is what we came up with. So we are going through this process of how do we help support our nonprofits, our government employees, everyone in monitoring and evaluation during this completely unprecedented time. So yesterday, Veronica addressed how do we tell our story? When we're in this crisis response, how do we identify what our story is and share that with the world? Today, I'm picking up the ball where she left it off, and we're looking at, okay, now that we have this story, how do we create data systems that can collect that information? And again, this emphasis on being nimble and rapid, because we don't have time to build out a huge database. And then after that, tomorrow, Diamond will be picking it up from there, and she'll be looking at more sustainable, longer term solutions. So, yeah, that's all of what I just said. So moving on, what to expect from today and from me. We'll be starting with just a really quick note about technology in general. Then I'm going to do an introduction to forms. It'll be really brief, but what I want to do is just give you a rationale for why do we use it, why do I use it, what are its benefits, and what are its drawbacks. Just be honest about its pros and cons. And then I want to do a really quick demo just so you can see what it is that I'm talking about. You have something to latch onto. After that, I want to do an introduction to Data Studio. And I want to talk about, one, just what is a dashboard? It's something, I think it's a term that's used frequently, but not necessarily, we're always talking about the same thing. So I just want to be clear what I'm talking about when I say dashboard. I want to go over again the rationale, the benefits and drawbacks of a dashboard, and then do again a really quick demo for you. And then at the end, we'll do a Q&A. I'll also take questions in between forms and Data Studio if that's helpful. So, as I said, we now have taken you to a place where you've identified what it is that you, is your impact that you are making, that you are creating. You've identified these outcomes or these outputs that you want to measure, and you're in a place where you want to automate. And so I would say, as somebody who is a huge fan of technology, that I feel like automating anything can go either way, and anybody who has been a part of that process in any way can identify with this. So I love this visual to really capture the 2 ways that things could go. Up here at the top is our theory, what we think is going to happen when we apply technology to our work. And it's that, you know, we have this level at which we're working. We recognize that in the automation process, our workload is going to go up, right? It's extra work that we're adding to our plate. But the goal, the greater purpose, is that it will eventually go down. And then we have all this free time to do the amazing other things that it is that we want to do. However, in reality, what winds up often happening is that we have our workload, we write our code, or we create our automation, or whatever it may be. Then we go through a debugging process. Then we decide that we need to recalculate what it is that we're doing. And then once we figure out a system that works for us, ongoing development happens. And in the end, we have no time for anything, and we've doubled our workload. I'm sure some of you are chuckling, because I'm sure I'm not the only person who's been in that situation before. But I am also here to say that I've been in that first situation too. It is possible, it does exist, and in fact, I am currently in that first situation, and it's with the tools that I'm about to share with you today. And so I think when it comes to applying technology to anything that we do, I think it just becomes not necessarily a question of if, but a question of when. When does it make the most sense? And so again, the focus of today is when we need something that is it's a repetitive task that we want to apply technology to, and it's something that we want a nimble response, something that's quick and easy. So it's not necessarily something that's long-term, that's going to be lasting for a long time, or might be, but it's not yet. And we just want to test things out. We need something that is a quick pickup. And again, something that's nimble so that it can be iterative, that we can make changes before we make it official. So then I want to do a really quick check-in too about Google versus Microsoft. So I'm going to focus on Google in this presentation, but what I have to say very easily translates over to Microsoft. And the reason I'm putting these two at odds, they have very similar technologies. When I'm talking about Google Forms, I can also be talking about Microsoft Forms. I've worked with both many, many times. Their systems are so similar. And then similarly, I'm going to show you Google's version of dashboarding, which is called Data Studio, but Microsoft has something that's very similar. It's called Power BI. And if you have worked in one, you will be able to work in the other. The systems, the interfaces are so similar. The capabilities are very similar. So I'm talking about Google today, but Microsoft is just as applicable. I can also show you the back end at the end of this presentation of what Microsoft's version of these things looks like, if any of you are interested. And so in the end, I think a lot of times choosing between the two becomes, well, what makes the most sense? So if you're already based in Microsoft, and if you have the most updated version, then like 365, then Microsoft's probably the way to go. It's behind your firewall most likely, and it's just the system that's vetted by your organization. But if you are looking for a free solution that's easily accessible, Google is the way to go. And that's why I'm presenting it today. I think that when it comes to, again, being nimble, being easy to pick up, not having a really high risk because you've invested money into it, I would say Google's the way to go if that's a possibility. So again, that's kind of the reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. So with no further ado, and if there aren't any questions, I want to show you Google Forms. So just a really quick, okay, well, why? Why do we even use Google Forms? And it is a very dynamic tool, but in general, we use it to collect information. So we have, say, we're a nonprofit and we are now offering services that we've never offered before, and we need to find a way of capturing those services. Google Forms is a great way to go about doing something like that. If you have a long running program and you are finally in a place where you're ready to move beyond your outcomes and you're looking for some impact data, then maybe creating a Google form to send out a survey to your participants is a way to do this. Teachers can use this. If you're in the education field for quizzes and tests, it's a really, again, dynamic, flexible tool. You can use it to get feedback and administer quizzes and tests. So some of the benefits of Google Forms. One, it's an easy way to collect information. It's online, which makes it very accessible. As long as somebody even has a cell phone with internet reception, they can fill out a form for you. It's free, completely free for the user as well as the developer. It has the capability of being collaborative, so you can create a form and have many people, a whole team, come in and do editing and revising at the same time. It is very user-friendly. I find it very intuitive and easy to use. It has many features, so if you have a dream of how you want something to be built, you most likely can do it, maybe with some adaptation. And it can provide a live data to visualization tool, such as Data Studio is what that should say. And I'll get into what I mean by that and why I'm such an advocate of Google Forms in a moment. But there are some drawbacks that I just want to go over really quickly with you. The first one, which I don't think is too serious, is that you need a Google account to create a form. And that's easy enough because that too is free. It's as easy as signing up, entering a few pieces of information, and then you've got your account. I will say that Google Forms and Microsoft Forms do not have as many features as SurveyMonkey. When you're paying for a service, you are more likely to get more services. SurveyMonkey does have a free version, but in that regard, I think that its limitations makes Google Forms more of a preference for me. One thing that is worth noting, and if you're familiar with making surveys, this will make sense to you, but you can't branch questions, you can only branch sections. So you have to keep it simple. So if that doesn't make any sense to you, that's okay, I'll show you it when we get into the back end. Templates. This is probably the most disappointing part for me in Google Forms, is that their templates are really limited. They're sparse. Same thing with the ability to customize your forms to make it look a certain way and add your own template on top of it. It's not very flexible in that regard. So without further ado, I want to show you very quickly what a form looks like. So if I were to hop into my Drive, which you can see here in front of you, creating a form is as easy as going to this new button here. And if any of you are members of the Google community, this all looks familiar to you. If you were to hover over more, Google Forms is right there. It's accessible to everybody. So when you click on that, it will take you to a brand new template. I just want to show you, for the interest of time, an already developed template. So this is the course evaluation for the courses that we offer. So this is what it looks like on the developer's end. You can see there's some customization that's possible. You can see that it's possible to create sections, and then within sections you have your questions. So this particular form is broken up into just the welcome section. It's got its title, instructions, like every good survey has. We require an email address just so that we have record of who is filling out the form, but it doesn't necessarily need to. It can be an anonymous process. And then we break up our survey into, like I said, these different category areas. But as you can see, as I scroll through, it has the potential for lots of different types of questions. So if I were to use this menu over here and click Add Question, I can just show you really quickly the different options. So we've got the ability to collect a short answer and a paragraph response, multiple choice, checks boxes, drop downs. You can upload files. So if you have any reason that you need a file uploaded, sometimes with case management, that's a really helpful tool to have. I've developed forms for HR departments too, where they needed documentation of whatever it was that they were collecting information on. So that's been very helpful. There's linear scale here, which is just the Likert scale, 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 or whatever you choose. These are kind of complicated, but also I think there might be an example of them, the multiple choice grid and the checkbox grid. And then you can choose date and time options too. So there's lots of ways of collecting information from folks. And it's as easy as dragging and dropping and clicking and typing to move things around. You can see that you can just click and drag your options. If anybody is getting nervous that I'm just doing this at a whim, it's okay. This is a demo template. This isn't actually our survey. So yeah, this is what it looks like. It's pretty straightforward. I can show you really quickly what it looks like on the other end for a user. I'll click that preview button right here. And this is what it looks like. Because I broke it up into sections, we've got this next button. You can insert this tracker to see how far we've come along through the survey. I can't fill out the next without filling out my email, but just to give you a really quick view of what that looks like. Let's see. One other thing that I want to show you when it comes to the form that I think is just worth noting is that this is where the questions are held. Here's a tab that shows responses. So there aren't any responses yet. I should have typed some in just so you could see what happens, but here it will quickly aggregate the information. So if you're familiar with SurveyMonkey and you know how once responses start coming in, they'll do little bar charts and pie charts for you with all the responses, Google does a very similar job. It's not quite as good, but it's good enough. But I don't even use it, to be honest with you. What I use is this spreadsheet here. So you can download all the responses as a CSV, and then you can analyze it on your own. If you already have a template, you can upload the data into whatever template it is that you use for reporting. But this is what I love, and this is what's going to carry me into the next part of this this training or this webinar with you. You can create a Google Sheet, and by linking this to a Google Sheet, what happens is when people fill out the survey, their responses get automatically input into that Google Sheet. You can then go into the Google Sheet, you can add columns to it, you can make annotations, take your own notes. It does not impact in any way this process of they complete the survey, it gets loaded into Google Sheets. It's a really phenomenal piece of technology. Again, I've been working with it for a couple of years, and I still just think it's so outrageously handy. So there's that. And the reason that I love the fact that it auto feeds into a Google Sheet so much, which by the way, is also located in your drive. If I were to create it, it would just show up here in my drive like everything else. What I love so much about it is that we can then connect that Google Sheet and that live feed to Data Studio, which is their dashboarding, their tool for dashboarding. So with that connection, we are now taking the participants' entry, their information, we're live feeding it into this sheet, and then it's being live fed into the visualizations that you would create. And I just like, think about what happens when you send out that link to that dashboard to people. No longer do you need to run the same repetitive report that you've been running weekly or monthly or quarterly. No longer do you need to, I'll show you when we get to the dashboard demo. There's the ability to have interactive pieces to your dashboard, which enables you to have really condensed reports, which is another amazing feature. You can take a 5-page report and bring it down to a 2-pager, which is really incredible. So I'll show you that in just a moment, but I want to just go over dashboards in general and what they are and what I'm talking about here. So I'm actually going to stop talking for a second, and I want anybody in the room right now, there's 61 of us, so anybody, if you can just unmute yourself and tell me, what do you think of when you think of dashboard, when you hear the word dashboard? I have an example here, you can use that too if you want.
A quick reference.
You think of a reference. Great, thank you. Anybody else?
Well, it's in real time. Yeah.
Me too. I think that's a huge element of it. I think people talk about dashboards sometimes and they still are printing out a report. And I don't know if you've had that experience, but when I think of dashboard, I think of real time too. Anybody else?
Answer key questions.
It answers key questions. Beautiful. Yes, 100%. And I'm looking at this car dashboard and I'm listening to what you're saying, and it just like checks off all the boxes. It is so unrelated to what we are talking about, and yet it's so intimately related. So we have this car dashboard in front of us. It's highly visual. Thank you, Amy. We don't see any words on here, some letters and abbreviations, but that's about it. It's real time. It's interactive. So just in general, to define it, it's a tool. It contains real-time information. It's information that is relevant to the reader, and it helps them to make effective decisions. That's another really important piece. And when it comes to data dashboards that we create, it's directly connected to one or more databases, and it automatically updates itself. The purpose is to give us the ability to remove ourselves as analysts a little bit so we can do some of the other work that analysts do, like teaching people how to work with our data. And the information is shared via visualizations. And so that takes me back to this dashboard, right? It's interactive. It helps us make decisions when we fill up our gas, when we go get our car repaired, when we slow down because there's a speed trap coming. Like all of those things are given to us in this very visual form. And so similarly, when it comes to creating dashboards, again, Google has this free tool, 100% free. All you need is a sign in, an account to sign into. What I love about it is that it is very, very similar, as I said before, to Tableau and Power BI. So I have used Tableau, I have used Power BI, I'm very familiar with both of them. When I first found Data Studio, I was just blown away at how similar it is. They really did not make an effort to customize their tool at all, which is incredible for us, because if any of you have paid for or even just looked at the price tag on Tableau, you'll understand. Power BI is very similar. Power BI offers a free entry. I think they give you 90 days for free. And then even if you have a 365 account, you can go in there and create your reports for free. You can download them for free. But as soon as you want to share it, you need everybody else to have their own account as well. So they get you. They get your money eventually. So again, I'm emphasizing the free, especially again, when we're talking about a new system that we're creating. If we're trying to do something that's nimble and iterative, sometimes it's best to just start with free. So you're not investing too much money into something that might not work. I think it's very easy to learn. I think it's not as easy as Google Forms, but I think you could get the hang of it. I think it's easy to share. I know it's easy to share. It's as easy as sharing any other Google document. It's collaborative, just like any other Google document. You share and everybody can be in there editing at the same time, which could be a good thing or a bad thing. And it can draw from many types of data sources. So like I said, it can draw from Google Sheets, but it can draw from many, many other things. So if you have a SQL database and you're able to get a URL that ties to that database, you can create a dashboard in Data Studio. I can show you the different ways that you can connect in just a moment. But there are some drawbacks which are worth noting. One, you need the Google account to use it. It doesn't have as many features as Tableau or Power BI, and I will acknowledge that. So again, I see it as like training wheels, and then if you want to upgrade, go for it once you know that the system works well. This is the other thing, and I know nonprofits that feel strongly about this, that it can raise security issues. I would definitely not recommend using any Google anything when it comes to storing participant information, just because it's not behind any sort of security wall or firewall within your organization. So in that regard, you might just want to de-identify participant information, but you would want to pull in IT when it comes to using any Google platform, just to make sure that they're okay with it, or if they have any guidelines that they want you to follow when you do that. So let me quickly show you a dashboard that we have created. So this is for a course that we teach. Oh, actually, really quickly first, let me just show you. So you don't access Data Studio with that new button in your Drive. It's a totally different platform. You get to it by typing in datastudio.google.com. And again, if you have a Gmail account, then you have access to this now. So that's what that looks like. And then it looks very similar to a Drive. You can see this is the report that I'm about to open up. They do have some templates here, and you can also create a new one by clicking that create button. So then I'll just hop over to this report. Just so you can get an idea, this is a report that we create with the classes on dashboarding that we teach. And what this is this is 6 months of data for 4 states. So everybody representing New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Massachusetts are represented here. So these are all the accidents that have taken place in those 4 states from June to December 2019. And so this is the dashboard. You can see accidents by state, accidents by month, accidents over time, and then just circumstantial factors that they're taking into account. This displays 5 different ways that you can visualize data here on the same tab. One of the really phenomenal things, if you're new to dashboards in general, is this interactive piece that I was talking about. It's by far my favorite thing about dashboarding. So if I were to say, okay, thanks for this information, that's a lot of information. If I were creating a report for a leader of this coalition that's trying to reduce accidents, and they really wanted to drill down into New York and understand when are the most accidents happening in New York, you would have to create a whole separate visual or series of visuals. This report is starting to extend in its length. Not when it comes to dashboards. It's as simple as clicking on New York. This pie, don't embarrass me now, Google Studio. It's going to think, it's going to work though. So if I click on this pie, which is New York, it's 61.7% of the accidents that have taken place from June to December. It's going to think because it's a lot of accidents. But in just a moment, what it's going to do is show you all of those other stats for just New York. It's awesome. And it will happen. But I do want to show you too, while it's thinking, maybe it will do it for me. I have a page 2 as well. Oh, it's not working. This was a Google map. And so you can do mapping really easily as well. I'm not sure what happened with that link. But you can do mapping, and so you can see really clearly where the maps are taking place. You can do bubbles, so it'll show the concentration of the accidents that took place. We'll give this a minute. It's going to think. This might be another con of Data Studio. I've noticed that as the file sizes get larger, it just takes longer to think about what it's doing. All right, I think we'll go back to that in just a moment. I think that's it for me when it comes to the two. I guess I should really quickly show you two. I don't want to make it break. Okay, there we go. Just show you really quickly what the back end looks like. So it's, again, going to take a moment to think about it. But this is, in general, what it looks like. Again, if you've worked in Power BI or Tableau, this will look very familiar to you, especially once I click on one of the pie charts. So you can see all of the available fields, what it does. And I could open the Excel document, but you could also just visualize that these are all the column headers right here. And then it pulls in all of the row information, and you can fill in what information you want. It's similar maybe to a pivot table if you're familiar with those in Excel. And then you can stylize it in lots of different ways. So you can add your titles and change your colors, completely customize those. It's really, really flexible with what it can do. I wonder if it'll open my map here. I'm so surprised that's broken. It was just working last night. Okay, so that is Data Studio, just in a nutshell. I want to just give a couple final thoughts, and then I just want to hear questions. I want to answer any questions that you might have. But just in general, as an overarching idea, I find that Google's Forms and Data Studio are really quick, they're really flexible, and they're valuable when it comes to collecting and presenting information. And again, I'm saying this about Google Forms and Data Studio. I am currently in a place where I have saved so much time. We, for a staff of over 1,000, needed to collect incidents of COVID across the agency for both staff and participants. And we needed it like yesterday. And so I used Microsoft because we're behind the Microsoft suite. We use them. And so I created a form for data collection, and I have my dashboard running, and all of that happened relatively quickly. And it's been a dream. One thing that I didn't show you is that for people who are not comfortable with dashboards, you can download a PDF of the report or a PowerPoint of the report and then send it to people who just want to see the static visualization. I find that Google is excellent training wheels for other paid programs, but it's phenomenal standalone too. That's not to be condescending towards Google at all. It can do everything you need for the life of what you need for 95% of the time. Monitoring and evaluation is as much of an art as it is a science. I say this anytime I teach anything having to do with them. And so with that in mind, if it was 100% a science, it would be so easy to create an automation. It would be simple. But because we are collecting information on humans and human systems, we need things more often than not that are nimble and iterative in their design. And then once it becomes more routine, it's so much easier to systematize. But at the beginning, in the stages that we're in right now, something like this is just going to save you so much time and effort and heartache in the long run. And then more than anything, I would say, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it at the beginning about dashboards, but they reflect what the individual who's reading it needs to know. And so in that regard, I would say whenever you're creating any sort of dashboard or form, it's really important to make sure that you're making it a participatory process, that you have the people who, one, you're collecting information on, and then two, who you're collecting the information for in as part of the conversation, to make sure that you're creating something that will work for everybody. Okay, let me just stop here and see if you all have any questions for me. I've got a couple more slides, but I want to answer questions. So feel free to either type it in the chat box or just unmute yourself. Oh, is that clear, huh? All right. Oh, wait, there's somebody. Okay. All right, I'll let you think about it. I'm more than happy to answer questions after this too. So in terms of just learning, if this is all new to you, but you want to know more, what I will tell you is that this is what we do at Evaluation and Learning Consulting. So we teach classes. We, for the most part, have been teaching them in person, especially in New York City, to New York City government, but we're broadening rapidly. So we are also offering things live online as well as self-paced online. So with that in mind, if you're interested in learning more about either Google Forms or Data Studio, one, if you have any questions, please just feel free to email me. But if you're interested in doing a self-paced class, we have links to those. We have live online classes too, scheduled for July, so you can sign up for those. We also just teach classes on visualization, data visualization, if you're interested in learning more about that. We teach Excel, we teach R, Python, SQL, QGIS, anything having to do with data analysis is our wheelhouse, and we teach classes on them. And then what I do also want to share with you is that these Google Forms and Data Studio, since you were here as a thank you, we are offering any of those classes. If you're interested in continuing your learning and really digging in with us, you can use that discount code there, webinar63, for half off any of the classes. And that's good for 24 hours, not necessarily today only, through tomorrow at 3 p.m. So if you want to sign up, we'd be happy to see you in any of those classes. So if there aren't any questions, there are. Oh, good.
Yay.
Hi.
Hi, Liz. So here's your first question. Jessica wanted to know if you could show the back end of Power BI.
Power BI, yes, I can. It'll take me a moment to pull up, but yes, I can do that.
Do you want to answer another question? Are you a multitasker? Great.
Multitask.
So Peter would like to know, do you have any tips about how to think about what content should be in a dashboard? Many people struggle with figuring out what they should be displaying in a dashboard.
Yeah, it gets really complicated. Like it's hard enough to create a report and know what you should be putting in there, but when it gets to a dashboard, it becomes this extra level if you're making it interactive. Like right off the bat, I mean, my blanket statement would just be you need to have conversations with the people for whom you're creating it. So if it's a question of what content in general, that would be my answer. You need to speak to the people who will be reading it. And I would say you need to be speaking to the people who the data is representing to make sure that you get both sides really clearly before you do any visualizing. But if you're talking technically about what to include, what not to include, that's more complicated. And it would almost be, why don't we look at what the data is and figure that out? And I hope that doesn't sound like a cop-out. That's just really hard to say really clearly without having any sort of detail. Was that helpful, Peter, or were you asking something completely different? Okay. So I'll be on here if anybody wants to hang back and ask me any questions. Again, there's my email. You can find me on Twitter too. And then just thank you. Thank you so much for coming. It was great meeting and interacting with you. I will send out this recording as well as the slideshow probably later today, if not tomorrow morning. And then hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow for Diamond's final session. Thank you all so much. Have a great evening.